Friends, welcome to Port Nelson United Church in Burlington, Ontario for our service Sunday, September 11th, 2022. If you're here in person and joining us for the first time, and I know a number of people are, we welcome you in particular today, and we hope and pray that your experience is meaningful. And do sign our guest book if you're here for the first time on your way out, and that way we can welcome you personally this coming week. We also welcome those who are watching online today via our YouTube channel or at a later time. And if you introduce yourself to the online greeter, then you will be welcomed into the space online. So welcome to one and all on this Gathering Sunday. We're excited today for the return of our nursery children and youth programming after a summer break. And so Rain Montgomery is our nursery coordinator, and if you have infants and toddlers, just let one of the ushers know at the back, and they will take you to that space with Rain and the volunteer team for the nursery. Karen Eade and her team of volunteers are excited to launch Godly Play, and so thank you, Karen. And there's a little postcard in your bulletin. It would look great on your fridge at home, but it would look even better if you put it in the hands of someone else that you might think would benefit from the Godly Play Sunday Children's Program that we are excited to have for this coming year. And so that's a reminder of that in your bulletin today. And then Jay and Jocelyn are leading our Pinnacle Youth. That's a program for youth in grades 6 to 12, a leadership development program. So nursery, children's Godly Play, and Pinnacle Youth all start again today. And thank you to those who are offering leadership for the sake of our children and youth in this church family and in the community. And children and youth will be invited to go to the programs in just a moment after the peace greeting. After our service today, our men in aprons have prepared and are hosting a barbecue lunch, and the rain has stopped, so that's good news. When I woke up this morning and it was raining, and I thought that's just one more thing we need for the week that we've had. But anyway, there will be food enjoyed wherever it is, and so do stay after and support that, and it's a way to connect with others in the church family and to get to know others if you would like that opportunity. So again, a free barbecue luncheon after the service today. Leslie Mercer is part of our personnel committee, and she has an update that she would like to share with us today, and so I will invite her forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The Ministry and Personnel Committee is announcing that, for personal reasons, our Operations Manager, Leslie Cairns, has resigned. She will continue to work with us in order to assist in a smooth transition. During her brief months with us, Leslie has made a real commitment to Port Nelson and was truly engaged in doing an excellent job. We thank her for her very real contributions and wish her every best wish in her future.
Thank you, Leslie. We appreciate that and all of the work of the ongoing work of the Ministry and Personnel Committee. With 14 staff members, there's always transition and change, and so we appreciate all the work that our M&P committee does on our behalf. Well, it's been quite a week, as we know. Last Sunday afternoon, we went home and learned of the horrific events in Saskatchewan, and our prayers remain with the families of the 9 victims from the James Smith Cree Nation and the 10th victim who lived in Weldon, not far away. We're also thinking about those who remain in hospital as a result of that tragedy today. And of course, as we all know, this past Thursday, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Canada's head of state, died. We have set up a book of condolences in the gathering area that you may have noticed on the way in. A number of people have signed that already. We will make sure, one of the local funeral homes has provided that, and they're going to make sure that it reaches Buckingham Palace when we are finished with it. So do sign that book of condolences for the Queen if you wish. It's just outside the doors, and it will be available for the coming week as well here at the church if you wish to use that. We also continue to mourn the death of those in our church family, and we learned yesterday of the death of Karen Baldeo, whom we had been praying for. She had been in hospital the last couple of weeks, and so our prayers are with Karen Baldeo's family, her sister, and her nieces and nephews. And there will be a service of remembrance for Karen here at Port Nelson. The arrangements have not yet been made, but we will let you know via the weekly email when those arrangements have been made for Karen Baldeo. One of the very last pieces of communication from the Queen was a short note to Canadians, and it read this: "I would like to extend my condolences to those who have lost loved ones in the attacks that occurred this past weekend in Saskatchewan. My thoughts and prayers are with those who are recovering from injuries and grieving such horrific loss. I mourn with all Canadians at this tragic time." Indeed, it's not quite the tone that we may have hoped for, but there is lots to mourn and lament today. And Candy will be praying for the victims of the Saskatchewan stabbings a little bit later. But as we begin our service today, I would like to use the prayer that the United Church of Canada published this past week. After the prayer, we will observe a moment of silence, and then we will sing our first hymn. So let's just take a moment to enter a time of reflection on this day when we bring so much to the hour of worship, so much on our hearts and our minds for our world, our nation, and indeed our families. Let us pray. Holy God, we give thanks for the great cloud of witnesses, people whose lives we honor and cherish, people who have taught us how to live as best we can. We give thanks for the life of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who is now gathered among the faithful who go before us. May you bless and keep all who love and who will miss Queen Elizabeth. We pray especially for the royal family and all who held her closely in their hearts, and all who will shepherd nations of people in the grieving process. May you bless and keep the Commonwealth and all who wrestle with the complexities of the monarchy and what Queen Elizabeth represents. We pray especially for those who continue to unpack the legacies of colonialism as we work towards right relations and reconciliation. We bring all of this to you while giving thanks for the life of Queen Elizabeth and while celebrating your sovereignty over our hearts. Amen.
We enter a new time today.
What time might that be?
Creation time, when the color green changes to orange.
Oh, creation time, when life takes on a new rhythm.
Yes, on this gathering Sunday, we come to regroup, to reconnect, and to seek God's gift of ongoing recreation in our world, our community, and our lives.
As God's people gather in this place, let us worship.
And indeed, as God's people, we gather knowing that where two or three are gathered in His name, there is Christ among us. May the peace of Christ be with you always. So at this point, children and youth are invited to join the leadership, and we are invited to exchange words and signs of peace with one another today.
Come join our celebration, loving God. We are gathered in this fall season of creation as a faith community of prayer and praise. We give thanks for your creative, life-giving presence. We celebrate the joy of young people returning to the nursery, Adventure Crew Godly Play, and Pinnacle Youth programs, and the dedication of their teachers. We celebrate the prophets, leaders, and heroes of the Hebrew Scriptures and the new covenant revealed in Jesus Christ. We celebrate the work of your Holy Spirit, bringing compassion, justice, and a challenge to each of us and to this church. generous, loving, compassionate Creator, we stand in awe of how everything connects through the web of life. Wisdom, you have connected us in ways we could not have imagined or sought ourselves. But today we pray for the earth that mourns, for rivers smeared with waste and ground stripped and ravaged. Remind us that we are responsible and need to correct our mistakes. We pray for all who cannot rest in safety, who must remain alert to signs of danger because their countries are destroyed by war, or because their homes are torn by violence, or because they have no shelter but the street. Help us to move with compassion toward those who are in need. We pray for everyone around the world who mourn the death of Queen Elizabeth II, for her children, Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward Mountbatten Windsor, and their families. Please bring them support and comfort in their loss. We pray for the new king, Charles III, as he begins his duties. We pray for the families of all those who died so tragically in Saskatchewan. We pray for the people of the James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon communities in which they live. We pray for neighbors, friends, and family who are troubled in mind or body or spirit. We pray prayers of celebration and thanksgiving for Jacob Mackenzie, who had been journeying with cancer for many months throughout 2019 and 2020 and has recovered and starts university this week. We pray prayers of celebration and thanksgiving that Hamza Raslan's mother and 2 sisters will soon be coming to Canada, and prayers as they say goodbye to family and friends in Lebanon and Syria. We pray for Joanne Cordner and her brother Doug, both journeying with cancer. We pray for Karen Baldeo's sister, Lila, and family upon Karen's death Saturday morning. We pray for the following people in our church family who continue to mourn the death of loved ones: Annette Roberts, Leslie Harrison, Margaret and Richard Henson, Carolyn Petrie, Chuck Feist, Beth McCara, Rosemary Carr, Audrey Rogers, Ron Smith, Rod, Nancy, and Kim McGrath, Joan, Jeff, and Jay Tomlinson, and families, and Lisa Tays and family. Into the quiet of this space, we lift the people, places, and situations that are on our hearts today. We lift them into the light of your love, either aloud or in silence. God of holy love, of power and truth, we thank you for each sign of your stirring, for the songs of children, the laughter that helps us get through the hardships, the lingering sunlight, the healing of shattered dreams, bones, and souls. You are present in each reminder of life's grace. Patient and persistent God, let that grace and mercy overflow from our lives, that we might honor your name in this world. Wisdom, who weaves us in and out of the life that God created and called good, mend those loose threads of this web of life we call home, and tighten the bonds that bring us into loving relationship with one another. We pray all this in the name of Jesus, who came to seek and save what was lost, who taught us to pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Lament. Lament is a means to carry human expression of loss and grief. We find lament throughout the Bible. The prophets, including Jeremiah, used lamentation to go deeply into the pain and suffering that people experienced, so that they might in turn know the deep hope that eventually follows. In today's reading, the prophet Jeremiah laments on behalf of the people of Judah and Jerusalem city, who have sinned against God. He paints a vivid picture of the destruction and the desolation that will come to the nation and to the city when Babylon and Egypt invade. The prophet's metaphors of annihilation and anguish in this passage would have struck with brutal force at the false security of the people in their sacred fortress city. Within the context of this season of creation time, we might take Jeremiah's words as a warning of the destruction that may come upon us because of climate change and other environmental damage. Indeed, this could be a lament for our time, a lament for the harm we have brought upon God's creation. Let's listen to Jeremiah's lament, and then we will sing our response to that lament. Jeremiah chapter 4, verses 11 to 12 and 22 to 28. At that time it will be said to this people and to Jerusalem, "A hot wind comes from me out of the bare heights in the desert toward my poor people, not to winnow or cleanse, a wind too strong for that. Now it is I who speak in judgment against them. For my people are foolish. They do not know me. They are stupid people, stupid children. They have no understanding. They are skilled in doing evil, but do not know how to do good. I looked on the earth, and lo, it was waste and void, and to the heavens, and they had no light. I looked on the mountains, and lo, they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. I looked, and lo, there was no one at all, and all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and lo, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before his fierce anger. For thus says the Lord, the whole land shall be a desolation, yet I will not make a full end. Because of this the earth shall mourn, and the heavens above grow black. For I have spoken, I have proposed, I have not relented, nor will I turn back.
In today's gospel reading, we hear two more of Jesus' parables. We have been journeying with the parables for much of the summer, and we'll continue to do so for a few more weeks. Luke chapter 15, the first 10 verses. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." And so Jesus told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I lost.' Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." For the word of God in Scripture, among us and within us, we say together, thanks be to God. Amen. The great German theologian Karl Barth famously said, "Preach with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other." Some weeks that seems much easier than others, to be honest. And as you no doubt realize, the newspaper was pretty full this past week, whether you read it in paper version or online. And the biblical texts before us are also full. I said to my partner this morning, a couple of hours ago, "I just don't know what to do today. Maybe we should just go and have the barbecue and call it a day." The death of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, has elicited a wide range of responses. For me, it's about mourning the loss of the person apart from the institution. And I don't know about you, but my perception of the Queen and the life of faith that she lived is that she viewed herself as a humble servant of Jesus Christ alongside every other Christian on the planet. That's my perception, at least. So in this time between her death and her funeral, I have been thinking about funeral rites and the words that are spoken. And the reality is that the Church of England's funeral services deliberately place everyone on the same playing field in the eyes of God. Ever since the 16th century, when the Book of Common Prayer became the Church of England's liturgy, the kings and queens of England and Great Britain have had the same words spoken at their funerals as ordinary citizens. Because you see, the prayer book became this great equalizer. Oh, of course, some funerals have lots of pomp and pageantry, and we will no doubt witness that in the coming week. But it is my personal sense that the Queen saw herself as equal to all of us in the eyes of God because she took her faith seriously. So that's an introduction to our focus today. In terms of the Bible and the newspaper, back to Karl Barth, you can imagine that if one sees the word sermon in a headline, one preacher, they're going to pay particular attention. And there was a headline earlier this week in the Globe and Mail, and I don't see the word sermon in a headline very often, but there it was, and it read this: "Inaction tells those in power that our sermons on human rights can be ignored." there it was, right in black and white in the national newspaper, the word sermon. Well, suddenly I was wide awake, having kind of dozed off on page whatever of the newspaper. So I had to read the whole article, of course, and it was a lament written by a fellow named Nicholas Coghlan, who was a former Canadian ambassador to South Sudan. Well, what was Mr. Coghlan lamenting in this article? He was writing about the treatment of Beverly Giesbrecht in 2008. Giesbrecht, a journalist from Vancouver, was kidnapped and was being held for ransom in Pakistan by the Taliban. And at the very same time, the article explains, another Canadian diplomat, Robert Fowler, was seized by Al-Qaeda in Niger. And what this article by Nicholas Coghlan laments is that Fowler received great publicity and personal attention from the Canadian government and the Prime Minister of the day. He was released just 130 days after being in detention. It probably helped, Coghlan suggests, that Robert Fowler is the brother-in-law of a former Governor General. And the speculation is that Canada paid a ransom to Al-Qaeda for his release. On the other hand, Beverly Giesbrecht had no family. She had nobody in a position to pay up, and she did not live to tell her story. She died in captivity. Fowler, however, went on to write a best-selling book about his ordeal. So Nicholas Coghlan makes this stark comparison that really just kind of grabbed me, and then he went on to make other such comparisons, including the high-profile response to freeing the two Michaels from China last year that I'm sure most of us remember. And his article concludes this way, and I quote, "If your loved ones need serious help in some hot spot abroad, by all means look to the Canadian government for help, but know that some Canadians are more important to Ottawa than others." Ouch. And it's the way the economy and the world so often works, isn't it? Those who have prosper, those who do not have struggle along. Now, when we think of the word economy, we probably think of the interaction of markets and interest rates and employment and consumer spending. That's the economy, and it's in the news every day right now. Rising interest rates, high inflation, a challenging labor market. There is the classic definition of economics that I learned back in university, dealing with the problem of scarce resources. The starting point of economics is scarcity, not abundance. But what I've been noticing in the Gospel of Luke the last several weeks with these parables is something quite different. We know that Jesus had lots to say about money throughout the Gospels. We know that Jesus has lots to say about the allocation of resources. And we know that Jesus has lots to say about the stewardship of what has been entrusted to us. And all of this adds up to a different kind of economy, an alternative, if you will. Yes, resources are still scarce. There are still markets trading in Jesus' time. People work. People buy things. And the resource of our planet, with all its beauty, is under significant strain. Many experts are saying that we don't have much time left before harmful changes to our climate become irreversible. So yes, it seems everywhere we look, resources are scarce. But God's economy looks quite different than the economy in which we live. And so that's what this little sermon series that I'm going to use for the next few weeks is all about in Creation Time, to trace the qualitative economy, if you will. How do the stories of Jesus in his time open the gospel message for us about the big issues we face in our time? How is God inviting us, even commanding us, to respond in faith to things like climate change, inflation, interest rates? What does God's economy look like? And what we discover in the first two little parables that we read today in Luke is that God's economy includes all. That's the first and foundational principle. Nobody is indispensable. In God's economy, Beverly Giesbrecht gets the same attention as Robert Fowler. In God's economy, the queen in the eyes of God is the same as you and I. There are other examples of this, and here's one that has bothered me for 10 years. In 2012, on a country road in rural Perth County near Stratford, there was a horrific crash of a minibus and a truck. You might remember it, but I doubt it. 11 people died. It was the deadliest crash in Ontario in more than a decade. And 10 of the 11 people who died were migrant workers in the bus. I remember at the time seeing the story, just a small little piece on, maybe page 4 or 5 of the paper, and a few days later it was gone. There were no families in Canada who were grieving. They were all in the Caribbean. It was a story that I'm sure we have forgotten. But then 6 years later, in 2018, in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, 16 people died in a bus crash. And that's all I have to say, right? Because we remember it starkly. We remember it not because it happened 4 years ago rather than 10. We remember it not because, 16 people died rather than 11. We remember it because they were Canadian teenagers. We remember it because there were hockey sticks on front porches across the country. It was a national lament. And we remember it because someone has written a Wikipedia article about Humboldt, whereas the Perth County crash, you have to go back and just find archived old newspaper clippings this big. Now, I don't share this to make us feel bad. I share this because for years, it has been interesting and perhaps bothersome to see the attention given to one far more than the other. Because in God's economy, all are included. The Queen gets the same funeral as her subjects. Beverly Giesbrecht gets the same attention as Robert Fowler. And the migrant workers get the same attention as the Canadian hockey players. In God's economy, one lost sheep gets the same attention as 99 who are already found. Actually, even more attention. Well, at the risk of pushing the point a little further, aren't you glad you came to church today? The war in Ukraine ravages on. It's a terrible situation. It's an unjust war, just like is so often the case with war. And I know that some in our church have close ties to the Ukrainian community. I have been deliberate about keeping in touch with Father Makarenko at the Ukrainian church in Hamilton the last several months. He's a friend. We visited his church a number of years ago. His people are grieving. But I remind us that the war in Myanmar has been going on since 1948. And since 1948, about 200,000 people in Myanmar have died in the conflict. Then there is the war in Yemen. In the last 8 years, 377,000 dead. Or in South Sudan, since 2008, almost 400,000 have perished. So yes, there have been 40,000 lives lost in Ukraine this year. 40,000 too many. But there are so many other places in so many other wars and conflicts and experiences of hurt and death and pain. So dare I say that in God's economy, Myanmar, Yemen, South Sudan, Afghanistan, Syria, and elsewhere get the same attention as Ukraine. This is tough to hear, I know. Now you're really glad you came to church. Because gospel news is never easy to hear, and it never comes easy. That's what lamentation is about, going deeply into the pain and the suffering so that we can experience even more deeply the fullness of God's grace. So you have to wade deeply into the pain and the loss in order to discover the depth of good news that is authentic gospel, not just a surface dressing. And that's what Jeremiah is doing, lamenting loss. But you might have noticed that a lament almost always offers some glimpse of hope. And the line, did you catch it? The whole land shall be desolation, yet I will not make a full end, God promises. It will get bad, it might get really bad, but it won't be the end. What is lost can almost always, in some form, eventually be found. In God's economy, all are included, but that's not a chore. It's not an obligation. Including all isn't meant to be a burden. No, did you catch what Jesus says about this? According to Jesus, including all is a joy. Rejoice with me, for the one that has been lost has been found. It's a joy to include one sheep. It's a joy to find one lost coin. And if we don't, then something is missing. And it's more than a sheep or a coin that is missing. It's a sense of completeness. For if one is lost, then all suffer. If one is hurting, we all suffer. I think that's somewhere else in Romans, perhaps. We all suffer together. If one is lost, then the community is not complete. So really, I think these two parables might be about the best example we have in the whole Christian story, the whole Bible, about the very nature of joy. This joy of finding is so rich that it calls on others to share in it. I once was lost, but now am found, we sing in the old hymn. Rejoice in the good news. I love how Frederick Buechner speaks of Christian joy because I think he captures the heart of it. He compares joy to happiness. Buechner says that happiness turns up more or less where you'd expect it. Oh, a good marriage, a rewarding job, a nice vacation, that's happiness. But joy, on the other hand, joy is as notoriously unpredictable as the one who bequeaths it. Joy is as notoriously unpredictable as the one who bequeaths it. And in the parables of the lost sheep and the lost coin, we meet this unpredictable God who bequeaths unpredictable joy. Because God's economy includes all. God's creation includes all. This is not only a vision for which we reach, it's the very joy of the faith. Well, to close, the preacher and the poet extraordinaire, Barbara Brown Taylor, she paints the vision for us of this beautifully. She says, maybe some of us are destined to be shepherds and others of us to be lost sheep. But when I am working so hard to find and stay found, it is difficult not to judge those who seem to capitalize on staying lost. I want to believe that they are not merely lost people, but that they are bad people, because then I could write them off and save myself some grief. I want to concentrate on the good people, the ones who want to be found, or who are busy finding others, you see. I think about heaven ignoring those good folks in favor of one sinner who finally says, I'm sorry. And I want to sue God for mercy. But then I hear someone behind me calling my name. And big brown hands grab me by the scruff of the neck and hauling me through the air and laying me across a pair of shoulders that smell of sweetgrass and sunshine and home. And I am so surprised and so relieved to be found that my heart feels like it is being broken into, broken open, while way off somewhere, I hear the riotous sound of angels rejoicing.
Or online outlines the various ways of contributing to Port Nelson financially. Please refer to it to see which method works best for you. For those of you here today, there is an offering plate at the back of the worship space for you to use as you leave. When we consider the remarkable abundance that God has bestowed upon us, we are overwhelmed with gratitude. The world that Creator God has given us is a never-ending source of wonder, fulfilling the need of every creature. We take time this morning to offer back a portion of these gifts in hopes of helping others in the name of love. Please ponder our life of abundance and God's Spirit as we listen to this gift of music. Let us pray. Gracious God, when you created the world, you dedicated us to be a part of the balance of all good things. Multiply our efforts by your grace, God of love, so that the needs of a hurting and lonely planet may be met and all will know that they are cared for. Each creature, each ocean, the sky, and the land. People everywhere will know that they are valued and a beloved part of your creation. Strengthen us as we give and receive within your community of love and mutual support. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
On this day of so many events, so much mixed emotion, go from this place into the day and the week and the wide world, knowing that as you go, wherever you may go, you are loved and held in those everlasting arms that will never let us go, because we are not alone. We live in God's world. And so now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit rest upon you and remain with you today and always. Amen.